Good evening. Welcome to the Big Story. I'm Regina Lay.
I'm Gretchen Ho. And I'm Shawn Yao.
Tonight's big stories. President Bongbong Marcos denies his hand in the impeachment of Vice President Sara Duterte, stressing that his allies in the House who signed for it were just doing their constitutional duty.
Senate President Chis Escudero says no, there will be no impeachment trial until after Congress resumes in June. He says the lower house has no right to pressure them into acting on the complaint now.
Meanwhile, presidential sister and Senator Amy Marcos, for one, has come out and promised to fight the impeachment complaint against her friend, Vice President Sara Duterte, until the end.
For the first time since coming into power in 2022, President Bongbong Marcos held a proper press conference with Malacanang reporters. By that, I mean he had a proper exchange. Usually, he would just get ambushed by the reporters.
May I just say, it's my first time to see that hall, and it looked really, really nice.
Usually, he would send his cabinet members. Anyway, the main topic today, of course, Sara Duterte, the first sitting vice president to ever be impeached by the House of Representatives.
Well, President Marcos was quick to clarify that he had nothing to do with the impeachment and insisted several times the process took on a life of its own. He said that he even tried to talk to his allies at the lower house out of it.
One thing, though, that the president admitted to is that he did talk to his son, Congressman Sandro, and his cousin, the House Speaker Martin Romualdez, about the impeachment. Maricel Halili with tonight's big story.
At the onset of his first proper press conference at Malacanang, President Bongbong Marcos got right to the point and addressed the issue of the impeachment of his former running mate and now Vice President Sara Duterte.
I made the pronouncement. Sinabi ko na ayaw ko yung sana wag na tayo mag-impeachment dahil madaming ibang trabaho at actually it's also not practical. Nung panahon na yon, nung una kong sinabi yun, wala pang nagfa-file ng impeachment. Kung titignan naman ninyo, yung mga kaalyado ko sa House of Representatives, wala sa kanila ang nag-file. Wala sa sumunod naman nila sa hiniling ko sa kanila.
But since there were other groups that pushed for the ouster of Duterte via Congress, Marcos insisted the executive can only step aside.
Once the impeachment complaints are filed, they have no choice. The House has no choice. The Senate has no choice. Kailangan nilang i-proseso ang impeachment complaint. And that's exactly what has happened.
But the chief executive repeatedly dismissed allegations that he had a hand in the House impeaching the vice president on February 5.
No, the executive cannot have a hand in the impeachment. Nandito na ito. Hindi na namin maiwasan.
What the president did admit was that his son, Congressman Sandro, went to him and asked his advice about impeaching the VP. The senior deputy majority leader was the first to sign the document calling for the ouster of the VP on several grounds that include corruption, destabilization, and plotting to kill the president, the first lady, and House Speaker.
Sabi ko kay Kong Sandro, sabi ko sa kanya, the process has already begun. So, it's your duty now to support that process.
He also admitted he did speak about the case with Speaker Martin Romualdez, his cousin, and other congressmen.
Did we discuss it with the Speaker? Did we discuss it with the other congressmen? Of course. And tinatanong, anong plano ninyo? Ano ba talagang gusto ninyong gawin? And that's it. Well, nandito na ito. Hindi na namin maiwasan.
Congress has now gone on break and will resume session on June 2 after the midterm elections. But is Marcos ready to call a special session of Congress, which is well within the power in order to advance the case in the meantime?
The senators asked for it, yes. Pero kung wala silang request na ganun, ibig sabihin may iba pa silang ginagawa. They're not yet ready.
Marcos also said he doesn't see the impeachment trial having a big impact on the economy. In the end, the president insists his opinion on the issue isn't important. After all, the ball is now in the court of senators, who will be acting as jurors in the trial of Duterte. For now, Marcos says he is just a quote-unquote very interested observer. For News 5, Maricel Halili, We Are One News.
As we know by now, it is the Senate who will be standing as a judicial body and decide whether the Vice President is guilty or not. 2/3 of its 24 members, or 16 senators, must vote in favor of her impeachment for her to be removed from office. But when will the upper chamber convene as a judicial body? Senate President Francis Cheese Escudero says that legally, an impeachment trial cannot be done while Congress is on break.
Para mag-convene ang impeachment court, kailangan may sesyon ang Senado. Para manumpa ang impeachment judges, kailangan may sesyon ang Senado. So kung may mangyayari mang aksyon o kaganapan kaugnay nito, yan ay mangyayari sa June 2, pag-resume ng Senado, matapos ang eleksyon.
But according to former Bayan Muna Representative Nery Colmenares, who was a public prosecutor during the Corona impeachment trial in 2012, senators do not need to be in session for the trial to begin.
Iba yan sa Senate. The impeachment court is not a legislative body. Kung pansinin nyo, pag legislator ka, may oath ka as legislator, di ba? Pero ang mga senador, pag magkaroon na ng impeachment trial, meron silang hiwalay na oath as impeachment judges. Kaya hindi sila sa Senate. Hindi sila dependent ang buhay nila sa Senate. I-suspend muna ang Senate hearings, ang legislative proceedings nila. Lalo na ngayon, wala na silang itatakel na bill. Tapos na ang halos majority ng mga bills nila. Kung babalik sila sa June, ano na lang yun? Pro forma na lang halos yun. Kaya they have all the time now until June 30 na mag-impeachment trial. So, yung punto na lang dito is this. Pwedeng ituloy ng Senado ang impeachment trial ngayon kung gustuhin nila.
Escudero also says that Duterte's impeachment trial can cross over to the 20th Congress. There's a little bit of confusion over that, with others saying that if the 19th Congress Senate does not finish a trial, the next set of senators will have to start from scratch. Escudero also slammed those calling on the Senate to act on the complaint immediately, to which the Makabayan bloc hit right back.
Naman siguro makatarungan o tama na pagkatapos nilang upuan ito ng ilang buwan, biglang pwersahin, pipilitin at sasabihan kami ng sino mang galing sa Kamara na, hoy, bilisan nyo, aksyonan nyo, ano ba kayo? Hindi ganon at hindi ako papayag din nun. Kung nagpa-banjing sila gawin ito, siguro wala naman silang basihan ngayon na madaliin kami, lalo na nasa huling araw na ng sesyon. Yan pinadala sa amin, halos mag-aalas 5 pa ng hapon.
Huwag namang sabihin na sisihin pa kami, no, na ngayon lang namin ipinasa. So kung kagaya ng kasabihan, kung gusto ay pwedeng gawin, di ba? Kung ayaw, maraming dahilan at maraming sinisisi. So hinahamon ko ngayon si Senate President Escudero na come on, i-ano mo na, no? I-convene mo na yung Senado as impeachment trial court.
Still, Escudero says the Senate may conduct a review of the articles of impeachment and familiarize themselves with the task of being senator judges in the trial during the break. As for the trial itself, the Senate President says VP Sara can represent herself since she is a lawyer, but she cannot be forced to testify.
That would be expected. Sinabi na niya yan, abogado siya, abogado rin. Si Vice President Sara Duterte, abogado rin yung kanyang asawa. Hindi ko na ikakagulat yan kung mangyayari man yan.
There's no legal impediment to that.
There is none.
So, sir, ko
In
consider...
fact, even the Vice President herself can represent herself in addition to other lawyers. Hindi siya pwedeng piliting tumestigo sa kaso because it will violate, on the other hand, the right against self-incrimination. Kumbaga, hindi siya pwedeng patawag ng prosecution at pwersahang paupuin doon para tanungin kung ayaw niya.
In short, there's lots of legal questions that remain over how this trial will be conducted. And so let's try to get some answers with our first guest tonight. We have former Supreme Court Senior Associate Justice Antonio Carpio. Good evening, sir. Welcome back to the Big Story, Justice Carpio.
Good evening. Good evening, Shawn, Christina, and Gretchen.
Regina, sir. Anyways, the first question, there's a lot of issues that need to be tackled, but the first thing I wanted to ask you was your reaction to how it all went down. You know, as we pointed out earlier in the show, for many months, 3 complaints had languished in Congress. They debated it, but ultimately decided not to endorse it to the Speaker's office. And then finally, on the very last day of Congress, at the 11th hour, in fact, past 5 p.m., or rather in the afternoon, they finally got the signatures together and then transmitted to Senate an hour before Senate themselves adjourned for the break. How did you think? What was going through your mind when you were following this?
Well, I was saying already before that there was no more time. And because the House delayed in transmitting the articles of impeachment to the Senate, it even aggravated the matter. And that's exactly what happened now. The Senate did not even take it up in their last session before they adjourned. No? So that's the problem now, and they don't want to discuss this because they're on recess, and the senators who are re-electionists are more interested in their campaign now, and you cannot really call them to session now. The president, of course, can call a session, but the president can call a special session only to enact a law that is immediately necessary to be enacted. And this is not, this trial is not a law. No? So there's that problem. So I think what will happen now is the trial will be held in the next Congress when you have new senators, 12 senators, plus the holdover senators now. I think that will be the time when the trial will be conducted.
So, Justice Carpio, in short, you are saying that Senate President Chief Escudero is correct in saying that an impeachment trial cannot be convened while Congress is on break. He was going by their own House rules.
Yes, because they have their calendar, and although the Constitution says that once the articles of impeachment is transmitted to the Senate shall forthwith conduct the trial. But of course, if you look at the past impeachments, in the case of former President Estrada and former Chief Justice Renato Corona, there was a time gap when it did not happen that once the articles of impeachment reached the Senate, that they conducted the trial immediately. There were several weeks or even a month before elapsed or passed before they conducted the trial. So you cannot say that they should immediately conduct the trial because you have to take into account also the calendar, which was agreed by both houses, by the way.
But Attorney Nery Colmenares in our earlier report said that their duties as legislators is different from their duties as impeachment judges. What do you say about that comment, meaning they can suspend all the hearings or sessions and fulfill their mandate when it comes to being a senator judge?
Can you repeat that? I lost you.
Attorney Colmenares said that their mandate as legislators is different from their mandate as an impeachment judge, meaning to say that they can suspend the legislative proceedings in favor of convening as an impeachment court.
They can if they want to, but you cannot compel them, especially so during the election period that started already. By February 11, they will be on the campaign trail. So if they want to, it's really up to them. You cannot force them.
Okay. Justice Carpio, I know there's been no precedent, so we're all kind of grasping at straws here and trying to figure out, what is within the bounds of the law, what is legal. And I was wondering, this crossover from the 19th Congress to the 20th Congress, you've said that that's allowed, but who would decide, the finer points of this? What will happen to the newer senators, the new batch, the old batch? How would this be decided? Would the ultimate arbiter of this also be the Supreme Court, if ever?
Well, after June 30, there will be a new Senate, 12 new senators and 12 old senators, and they are mandated to hold the trial because the Constitution says they shall conduct the trial, conduct the trial, and so they will conduct the trial. What happens there is, as explained by Senate President Scudero, they would have to amend, revise their rules of impeachment because every time there's a new Senate, whenever they have new 12 senators, they always readapt their rules of procedure, their rules of impeachment, all other rules are readapted. So they will readapt that, and he said that he would want to incorporate the new developments in the rules of court. That means they will use judicial affidavits. If they do that, they will cut down trial work by more than 50%. And I'm in favor of that because this will really expedite the proceedings. So they will first revise and adopt their new rules of impeachment. And then they have to give Vice President Sara Duterte 10 days to answer. 10 calendar days. And after that, then they can conduct the trial. So it will proceed because there's no bar, no legal impediment to the trial being conducted by the new Senate.
But maybe the question there, the procedural question there is whether or not the 20th Congress will start from scratch or they can just take the baton from the 19th Congress. This is what Shawn was asking, I guess, about the crossover, whether or not it can continue and can continue advancing as the chamber changes guard.
And to add to that, Justice...
They can continue because, first of all, they haven't started yet. I mean, they will start fresh because they have not even issued the order for Sara to comment. So they have not even put it in their agenda. So it's the next Senate that will put it in the agenda for the first time.
Justice, can you confirm?
Not a single witness has testified. No answer yet from VP Sara. So, in other words, it will start it will have a fresh start in the news. In the new Senate, there's nothing to continue because they haven't started yet.
Hypothetically, though, Justice Carpio, if for example, SP Cheese Escudero decided to start it now, what would happen? Because it would appear to me that it's his prerogative as Senate President to make this call, to just wait until the new Senate comes in so that, malinis siya and it's clean. But could he do otherwise and start like the preparations as early as now and then hold on to the trial or hold the trial until the new batch of 12 senators get sworn in?
Well, he was saying that his legal staff is going over the articles of impeachment to check the signatures, to check everything. So they're actually doing some work. But for Senate President Scudero to call the Senate into session, it's not in the calendar. So I don't know how we can call the Senate into session. There being it's not in their calendar. And usually the calendar is, all the time, is determined by both the House and the Senate.
Okay, but Justice Carpio, I know the Senate actually adjourned earlier than it was supposed to be. It was supposed to be February 8th, which is Friday, but they already adjourned yesterday. So, technically, meron pa pong mga araw na natitira doon sa calendar na yon. And I'd like to zoom in on the section in the Constitution that says once the articles of impeachment have been submitted, trial by Senate shall forthwith proceed. And if you check the definition of forthwith, it means immediately, at once, and without delay. So we have, I think, 3 more days or 2 days left till in the official calendar, till Senate adjourns. So could this be argued for being unconstitutional, that the Senate did not act immediately as it should have?
Well, you have to look at the precedent, as I said, in the impeachment trial of former President Estrada and Chief Justice Corona. When the articles of impeachment reached the Senate, they did not immediately take up. They did not immediately conduct the trial. I mean, you have to look at their calendar also. Forward doesn't mean at once, no? In other words, as soon as possible, given your calendar and other matters in your calendar. So you have only actually a few days. Even if you follow if they still have 2 days, the most that they can do is to, first you have to, they want to revise their rules of procedure for impeachment, and that will take time. Second, they will have to require VP Sara to comment, and they have to give VP Sara 10 calendar days. So they cannot start without the comment. So there's really no more time.
Justice, the other question there was what does the Constitution say should happen in case the Vice President resigns before a trial is even, before the court is even convened, or even before the trial concludes, before she is convicted or not convicted. What happens if she resigns her public office? We've heard one side of it. Somebody said that means, well, House Representative Joel Chua said he believes the law says that she is still immediately barred from pursuing public office. What do you think?
Well, if she resigns and before there's a judgment of conviction, then there's no prohibition for her to run again.
There's also another school of thought that if she does resign, itutuloy pa rin daw yung impeachment trial. Is that normal? And also, I think they were using, with regard to what Regina just said, they were using as precedent what happened to Merceditas Gutierrez at the start of the Pinoy administration. Yeah.
Actually, the Constitution says that the penalty shall not go beyond removal from office and perpetual disqualification to all public office. So if he has resigned, it's academic. You cannot remove her from office anymore. So I think they will just dismiss the impeachment complaint because she's no longer in office.
But what they want, Justice Carpio, is for her to be perpetually banned from running for other public posts in the future, or like forever, basically, unless she gets an...
Yeah, they can file a criminal case because that's separate. And in the criminal case, if she is found guilty, there will be a prohibition office.
Okay. But minus a conviction in Senate, then the penalty of perpetual disqualification will not hold if she does resign.
No,
Okay.
Yeah, not in the impeachment case, but if there's a criminal case, there's a perpetual disqualification also if she's convicted.
Right.
So it's valid to resign in the middle of the whole trial. There's nothing in the Constitution that says otherwise.
Well, that could be. If the Senate will continue, she will go to the Supreme Court, and the Supreme Court will have to decide, because that's a case of first impression, whether the Senate still has jurisdiction because she's not in office anymore. It could go either way.
The House has already chosen 11 prosecutors for this impeachment trial. Can you give us an idea of how that process goes? Because I think we just got a list of names. but we didn't have any idea on how this was actually done. Was there voting? Is it through voting? And how or what happens now if they don't get reelected in the midterm elections?
Well, if they don't get reelected, then they cannot be a prosecutor, public prosecutor, but they can also join the private prosecutors because the House can also, like in previous impeachments, also engage the services of private prosecutors.
Right. And actually, this is something we've been asking the lawmakers since yesterday. How did they get chosen to be on that 11-member House prosecution panel? And we've gotten different answers.
Yeah.
Congressman Joel Chua said he did not present himself. His name was just called in plenary. Other people said the members got elected, got voted. Other people said the leadership chose the names and then they agreed. Point being,
Well,
it was all behind the scenes. Is that common? Is that usual? Justice?
Well, I think that's how it happened before. There was no voting as to who will be the prosecutors from the House. Maybe the leadership just chose and everybody agreed. I mean, there's no procedure. There's nothing there which says that the prosecutors must be voted upon. If the prosecutors are recommended by the speaker and nobody objects, and that's it.
So in short, Justice, it's kumbaga, bahala na sila. No? It's an internal matter within the lower house. So how they come up with these 11 names is completely up to them.
Yes, of course, because they have to choose their own prosecutors, and if there's no objection from anyone, then the choice of the speaker will prevail.
Right. But for those who were not around to follow the Chief Justice Corona trial, give us a sense of how heavy the burden is on these prosecutors, Justice Carpio. I mean, there's 11 of them, and these are high crimes that we're talking about: treason, bribery, betrayal of public trust. How difficult will it be to prove their case?
Well, they will have to present. They have unearthed a lot of evidence already during the Quadcom hearings, during the committee hearings in the House, and I think they will also. I think they, of course, will subpoena the bank accounts that's allowed in an impeachment case, and of course, there's the testimony of the two military aides of Sara who ended up in possession of the 125 million pesos because the House did not actually ask the two military aides what they did with the money. So that issue was given to the DND for further investigation. So then the testimony of those two military aides are crucial.
And now, because she is impeached, then the the bank secrecy law is lifted automatically. Is that right?
Yeah, because that's one of the exceptions under the bank secrecy law. The impeachment court can order the submission of the bank documents of the person being impeached.
Just to clarify, Justice, who can request for these bank documents? Would it be, the Senate side? Would it be the 11-panel prosecutor?
The prosecution will, of course, request for the bank documents.
And nobody can say no.
Well, that will be voted upon. If there's any objection, there will be a voting, and it's by majority vote. The members of the Senate will decide.
Are all proceedings required to be public to everybody, available to everyone, or are they allowed to have
Yes.
an executive session of some sort?
Unless they go into executive session, in all the previous impeachment cases, everything was televised.
But there is a prerogative to have an executive session.
Yes, they can if that's what the impeachment court decides.
Justice, I want to go to the possibilities here. We do know that Senator Chis Escudero already said that this will be tackled in the next Congress. But President Marcos said today that he could call for a special Senate session if the upper chamber of Congress requests it. Can you weigh in on that, just in case the Senate changes their mind? And would they need a quorum on that? Like, what if one senator says no, do they all have to say yes to the idea of holding a session during the break?
Or like you said earlier, let me just add, Gretchen, you said earlier at the beginning of this interview, Justice, that the president can only call such special sessions under two circumstances. One is if an emergency law has to be passed. What is the other condition? Would it be this, something like this?
No, only to enact a legislative measure, and this is not a legislative measure.
Okay.
All right. So, but they can still hold that. What if one senator says no, we don't want to convene during the break? Does that nullify everything?
No, if the president calls for a special session already, Senate President Escudero said we will attend because it's they have to attend a call for a special session. But the special session will be to enact a law, to deliberate and enact a law. And so when they arrive in the Senate, they will ask what is the law being proposed. There's none.
And then lastly, Justice, Senate President Cheese Escudero, is he also right in saying that they cannot compel Vice President Sara Duterte to testify during the impeachment trial?
Yes, that's a right not to testify again on something that might self-incriminate her.
But they can otherwise call anyone else within her family in her defense or to testify.
Well, there are certain, like the husband probably cannot be called because of a privileged communication, but all others can be called.
Okay. We have run out of time tonight, so we're going to have to leave that there. But thank you so much for your knowledge and insights and for helping us shed light on this big issue. That was former Supreme Court Senior Associate Justice Antonio Carpio.
Yet more reactions on the historic impeachment of Vice President Duterte. That includes the president's sister, Senator Amy Marcos, vowing to fight ouster moves against her friend Sara to the very end. Well, that's up next on The Big Story. Keep it here on One News. Welcome back. You're still watching The Big Story here on One News.
Still on the big story gripping the nation this week, the country's third impeachment trial. Senator Amy Marcos has issued a statement and it reads, "Ayoko ng impeachment, ayoko ng destabilisasyon, ayoko ng revolutionary government, ayoko ng resignation, ayaw ko ng gulo." She went on to say, "Lalabanan ko yan hanggang dulo or I will fight it to the end." The rest of her statement pointed to day-to-day issues like high prices, unemployment, low wages, and lack of support to farmers, questioning why impeachment was being brought up now when it is not the solution. After Uniteam fell apart, Senator Marcos has been hounded with questions over where her loyalty truly lies, with her family and her brother, or with the vice president whom she calls her dear friend.
Well, we also know that some 91 lawmakers either did not support the impeachment complaint or wanted to be counted in, but were not physically present at the time of signature gathering. President Marcos said this afternoon he heard the number of those who wanted to sign went beyond 215. Now, among those who deliberately did not sign were ACT-CIS party list Representative Erwin Tulfo, who is a frontrunner in the senatorial race, Las Piñas Representative Camille Villar, Agri Party List Representative Wilbert Lee, One Rider Party List Representative Bonifacio Bosita, and Sagip Party List Representative Rodante Marcoleta. Congressman Tulfo said in a statement that he withheld his vote because he wanted to stay impartial in case he wins a seat in May and will then have to serve as a senator judge in the impeachment trial. The husband of senatorial candidate and Makati Mayor Abigail Binay, Makati Representative Luis Campos, also did not sign the complaint. Well, there's also Pampanga Representative Gloria Macapagal Arroyo, a known Sara Duterte ally and mentor, who refrained from signing.
Maybe there are personal relations that they took into consideration whether they will sign or not. And we respect that. Marami kaming pumirma, marami din naman silang hindi pumirma. Kaya masasabi mong walang pilitan at walang regret ang hindi pumirma.
Those who supported the impeachment complaint are now facing allegations that they did so for ayuda. A social media post went viral today, allegedly from Cagayan de Oro 1st District Representative Lordan Suan, telling supporters that Speaker Martin Romualdez provided them additional budget after they voted yes. Well, turns out the post was from a fake account. Those who signed the complaint also denied any ayuda.
Itong The Working Congressman, troll page po ito. Tapos black propaganda lang talaga yung trabaho niya. Nagpapanggap na ako, tapos nagre-release na mga statements na nakakainis.
This was an independent action. They signified their intention and support of the impeachment complaint based on the merits of the case and nothing more.
Ito po ay paraan para ilihis kung ano po yung talagang merits nitong prosesong ito.
Meanwhile, Batangas 2nd District Representative Jinky Luistro told our sister program Sa Totoo Lang that the 11-member House Prosecution Panel had their first meeting today. Luistro is one of the designated prosecutors.
We had our initial meeting kanina, no? So, nagkaroon na kami ng mga discussions, preparations, initial preparations, but definitely marami pa pong pagpupulong ang magaganap in preparation for this impeachment trial. Tapos, mayroon tayong organized na technical team who will be assisting all of us. And of course, there will be volunteer private prosecutors also who will be joining the public prosecutors or the prosecution team as we do this prosecution for the purpose of impeachment trial.
Let's take a break from all talk of impeachment, shall we? In other news, newly confirmed U.S. Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth and his counterpart, Secretary Gibo Teodoro, had their introductory call overnight on February 5 U.S. time. In a readout by the U.S. Defense Department, the two emphasized the importance of reestablishing deterrence in the South China Sea and enhancing the capacity and capability of the armed forces of the Philippines. Hegseth reaffirmed the U.S.'s ironclad commitment to the 1951 Mutual Defense Treaty and vowed to remain in close coordination with Teodoro. During his confirmation hearing just last month, Hegseth failed to identify any of the ASEAN member states. He also vowed to restore warrior culture in the U.S. Defense Department.
We're going to be pausing for a quick break for now. Right after that, the Second Congressional Commission on Education, or EDCOM-2 for short, notes a modest increase in the learning sector's budget in recent years. For the rest of their findings, we will be speaking to EDCOM-2 Executive Director Carol Mark Yee when the big story returns. Stay with us. Welcome back. You're still watching The Big Story here on One News.
The Philippines has been failing to invest enough in education, and the numbers prove it. The figures are coming from the report of the Second Congressional Commission on Education, or EDCOM-2, which was published just last January 28. It revealed underinvestment in Philippine education, resulting in a number of systemic problems. EDCOM-2 shares that the Philippines has fallen short of global standards, failing to meet 4 to 6% of GDP allocation for education. The report also highlighted misprioritized funding, with foundational education receiving the least budget growth compared to secondary and tertiary levels. EDCOM-2 is proposing evidence-based reforms to ensure a globally competitive education system for Filipino learners.
What do these numbers mean, and what can be done to fix the cracks in our education system? To help explain their findings and discuss reforms, we have Dr. Carol Mark Yee, Executive Director of EDCOM-2. Welcome to The Big Story.
Thank you for having me. Glad to be back.
I'm so sorry that we only have 15 minutes to talk about the big problem that is Philippine education. I'm sure we can go for hours about this. But I guess in a way that you could summarize the most astounding findings of this report, what are the roots of all the shortcomings.
Right. So I guess I'll start with
Philippines.
the lead, no, which was the funding on education. So funding on education has always been the largest relatively to other expenditures in education in the country, which is consistent with the 1987 Constitution. But when you analyze the funding in the past decade, what you actually see is that if you account for inflation, the growth has been flat. And then if you account for growth in student enrollment and look at per student spending, you will see that actually the increases have been modest. And in fact, beginning 2016, the increases in funding went mostly to senior high school because we launched the program then, and then to higher education because we launched universal access to quality tertiary education in 2017, 2018. But while all that was happening, our funding for the most important years of education, which is primary education, kinder to grade 3, has remained modest in terms of increases. And what we're saying is, education is important. It's good that we always have the highest share. But when it comes to prioritizing, we need to go right at the start because our kids need a strong start. If you look at all other countries that have succeeded in their education system, that's where they begin. Nutrition, kids should not be stunted. They should have early education. And at grade 3, they should be able to be literate and numerate.
So minus inflation, the funding has stalled. Meanwhile, the student population net continues to grow?
Of course, yes.
Right.
Yes.
Okay, and this starting to feel like deja vu because we had you here after the release of Year 1 report, and this is the Year 2 report. And what stood out to me with this report, at least the salient parts, I haven't had a chance to get through the entire book, but emphasize, of course, early education, the first 1,000 days. We already talked about this last year. Have there been any improvements between Year 1 and Year 2?
Well,
and please tell us. Give us some good news today, Mark.
Well, there was. There's a 980 million increase in the budget of DOH specific to nutrition to support early years nutrition. The president also called for a meeting with the secretaries of DOH, with the NNC executive director, with DepEd, DSWD, and DBM, and told them we need to get our priorities right. Starting this year, when we prepare our budget for 2026, sit down together and make sure that we are prioritizing the first 1,000 days. So that's actually a huge development because right now, even the president is watching and making sure that moving forward, we will not commit that mistake.
After the first 1,000 days, what comes next is daycare or preschool, right? For the more fortunate.
Actually, hindi na daycare yung tawag, pinalitan na
Child development centers.
To give it more gravitas.
Yes, and also, yes. And to also just focus to also show that it's holistic development.
Because there's nutrition
and education and
other physical needs even, right?
Yes.
That was part of the finding that movement.
Yes, and actually just this week, before they adjourned the session, actually called for the recess, we filed the bill, and we passed actually the bill, passed BICAM already, and the BICAM report was ratified, amending the Early Years Act. So we've put a lot of the improvements that we were recommending into this new law that hopefully will get signed in the next month or two, which will fix many of the problems that we found were structural that had to be addressed by law.
We actually did a documentary on this,
thank
right?
you for that.
So the DepEd actually led us to explore this problem in early childhood, and we discovered that a lot of the funding is dependent on how much budget the LGU has. So kung wari maliit na bayan, kung ito lang yung pondo, nasa desisyon pa rin nila kung magkano yung ibababa nila sa kanilang mga development center.
Definitely.
So is that structure changed in the new law?
So one is, DILG is now actually part of the ECCD Council and is co-chair with DepEd. They used to not be part of it. It used to just be the Union of Local Authorities of the Philippines. And so now there is greater teeth because then DILG pwedeng kumumpas sila to the LGUs na make sure to enforce it. Second, it was really inequitable, no? Because it's totally reliant on a special education fund, and SEF is dependent on the income of a municipality because it's 1% of real property tax. What we did was to put a provision there, fought for by our commissioners, that if you come from 4th and 5th class municipalities, there should be a local government support fund component where you could apply for funds to implement ECCD.
Oh, who's raising that fund?
It's national government compensating for the...
So it's a subsidy from the national government.
Yes, because we need to do that. Otherwise, we will have nice laws, but there would be no resources.
Bukod pa doon, yung sweldo ng mga teacher ay allowance lang.
Yes.
So how is that
currently
changed?
So right now, under the law, under the what will be a new law to amend the Early Years Act, if you're a child development worker with NC3 in early childhood education or an associate degree, you will have a salary grade 8, so you will have a plantilla position. And if you're a child development teacher you will get SG11, similar to teaching in a DepEd school. So moving forward, LGUs will now have plantilla positions, and then the child development workers will not have to be subsisting.
Displace also a lot of teachers who are volunteering in these childhood development centers, because a lot of them are not licensed, qualified, have not graduated, and that's the sad reality of it. But they've dedicated their whole lives to teaching the young kids. So what happens to them?
So we made sure that we have 70,000 really charitable, generous, committed child development workers.
It's basically a voluntary almost
job.
Yeah.
And the commissioners, our senators and congressmen, made sure that there was a provision there that the transitory period was sufficient enough. We also put 80 million in scholarships this year for their upskilling, and that there would be also equivalencies in education. In the world of education, equivalencies or recognition of prior learning means if you've practiced it for 20 years, we can have a checklist, because if you know the competencies already, you don't need to take the course. We will give you the certification.
So you're exempted.
Yes.
Well, that's good, because last year when we were talking after the year one report, wala pang ganito. So this was a big achievement.
This is, yes. So actually there are good wins naman, at least for early childhood
Because you are going now into the specifics of the problem, so it's clear to us.
Yes, same with us.
Then again, Mark, a new problem has cropped up in the higher grades, the principals issue. Some schools, no principal. What's going on there, and what are you guys doing to try to address that?
So we were very surprised when we found out. To be very candid, we did not think that was happening until we had that hearing and asked about, so how many principals do we have? How do we make sure they're getting the training they need? How many exit the profession and retire? And then when we found out, and DepEd was able to crunch the figures, we realized that half of our schools apparently did not have principals. Some of them had head teachers, some of them had OICs, some of them had teachers in charge. So there were very many iterations. The 2001 policy of DepEd gives so many responsibilities to principals. They are the ones who do the appointments of teachers, they assign teacher loads, they have hiring decisions, they have admin decisions, financial decisions. So it's very critical that each school has a principal. But there was a 1997 policy that said that if you only have 9 teachers and above, that's the time you get the principal. If you have 6 teachers and up, you only get the head teacher. But beyond that, it was quite silent. And so what we're saying is there's a need to update those policies to be really responsive to the realities we're facing today. And also second, appointment of principals kasi is devolved. So we're saying decentralized, but actually many things are also already decentralized. The decision to appoint principals happens at the division level. And so what happens is you have 200 plus divisions, and central office needs to be able to monitor 200 plus. And in Leyte, for example, one division handles 1,200 schools. So how do you actually monitor?
Sorry, so is there a shortage in principals, or it's just being hampered by an outdated law?
So both.
Okay.
So in some schools, we actually don't have positions for them. In some schools, there are positions, but they're not getting filled yet because the NQuesh, which is the principal's exam, are conducted yearly, but during the pandemic it stopped, and then some years it also stopped, and passing rates were dismal.
That's what I heard.
Are there enough qualified? Are there enough qualified people applying for principal positions?
Well, there are enough who take it. In 2016, 3% passed.
3?
Yes. For the past few years, it's been 30%. So right now we have about almost 8,000 qualified who could fill positions. And
there was talk, though, that they would tweak this exam somehow,
yes,
right?
Yes.
Is it really too hard, or is it another sign that maybe we need to train our teachers more?
Right. So I think that's already the direction of DepEd now, and we're very glad, and we've been working closely with them. So one, Secretary Angara is committed that they will really push for each school to have one principal. One school, one principal. And second, to review it. Because when we were in Singapore, so we traveled to Singapore together, and we saw that there, they don't wait for people to just take an exam to qualify and then they get appointed. They're actually very purposive. That
so
early on, they scout those with leadership potential, they stream them to training, they slowly groom them so they have good succession planning. So that's the direction of DepEd now.
It's easy to do for a small population.
Exactly.
Not for a country with 110 million people.
But I guess having the right intentions is a good start, and then let's figure out how to implement it. But at least now everyone knows about the concern. People are concerned and are decisive about it, to make a
How
solution.
heavy are those qualifications to,
Well,
it's become a
I haven't
principal?
seen the exam myself, so the next step maybe is to review
But
the
you
exam.
do you have to have a like master's degree?
Yes,
PhD,
yes,
meron lahat yun.
So
master's
it's pretty
at least.
high bar.
Yeah.
You know, as a parent of young kids, trust me when I say that I am a huge proponent of early childhood education.
Sure.
I've seen,
Yes.
you know, firsthand the differences, right? And I hear you when you say that the issue is misprioritizing of funds. But how do we solve this problem when tertiary education also has a lot of problems? Secondary education also has a lot of problems. How do you
Right.
take money away from that without hurting those demographics and, you know, putting more into early childhood education?
Well, we're not proposing that we cannibalize ourselves in the education sector and eat up funds from elsewhere. We're saying that
no more money, period.
No, we're saying that we need to invest more in education. And if we need to invest more and we're putting in more resources, let's put it in the foundational years. Because what are we seeing? We worked with the PSA to revise the FLEMS. No? The FLEMS is the Functional Literacy Assessment, which you will find in our report. For the longest time, we've been very proud that we had one of the highest functional literacy rates in the world. If you would look at all of the statistics of government, it was 90% plus for the past decade. But when we asked them how it was computed, comprehension was not part of the definition. As long as you could read a sentence, that counts as functional literacy. As long as you finished high school, that's functional literacy. And so we worked with them closely in the past year to revise it and then to simulate the findings.
So you've tweaked the metrics.
Yes. We've worked with PSA to do that, advocating closely with DepEd as well. You find out that when you recompute it, it drops to 62%.
Yeah, I was going to say, so the numbers like dropped. With how bad was the drop?
62% now from 90+%. And when you look at it, so we didn't stop there. We said, okay, so 30% are actually not functionally literate. Is that just now? Is that just, has it been happening? And how does it differ if you're a high school graduate or a college graduate? We crunched the figures and it's there also in the report. 30%. Regardless.
Are functionally literate.
Not functionally
Not
literate.
functionally literate.
Even college graduates, 50 years old and above, we have about 30% who are not functionally
What's
literate.
wrong? What's happening here?
They could not comprehend complex sentences.
As the PISA report said, you know, it's happening to our children, but what we didn't know was it's happening to even
been
grown-ups.
there for a while. It's been there for a while. That's why we're saying now, yes, senior high school is important. Yes, TechVoc is important. College is important. But we all need functional literacy.
To even get there, we need to start from the bottom.
But how do we begin to solve that problem?
So what we're saying is, we need to make sure that starting here on, no grade 3 student progresses to grade 4 without being able to read and being able to add and being able to... So I asked my dean, who are mostly
That's already
teachers.
in place, Mark. Isn't it? That's already a requirement. They all need to learn to... They all need to know how to read.
On paper, yes.
add.
But we need to be vigilant in actually making sure that that is happening.
Nakatulong, ay, nakadagdag dito yung pandemic that the teachers had to pass.
For sure.
Well, students, because it was a different time.
Yeah, so I guess we really have to call a spade a spade. No? The pandemic was a tough time for all nations anyway. It was very difficult to make sure that there's continuity in learning. But even before the pandemic...
But if 50-year-olds have or have also flunked the test and flunked the metric, that
and,
means before pandemic pa.
And the UNICEF study followed students from kinder to grade 4.
Sorry, I'm very
Go ahead.
curious to know if you have any findings on the success of the K-12 program, on the employability of the graduates of senior high school. Do you have anything?
Right. So we have several studies conducted, but what we found is there's still some challenges there. That is what DepEd is now working on, because the industry people are saying there's not enough hands-on training, and so they're not easy to employ because they didn't have enough training. And so the revisions that DepEd are proposing now is that they will revise and decongest the curriculum, a lot more time for hands-on training, so that actually they are working.
So K-10, very quickly, K-10, that's a go. The decongestion will
Yes,
be...
yes, Matatag is being rolled out already, and K147 is now implemented, 2358 this coming school year. So
you have your work cut out for you.
At least for one more year.
One more year.
We hope you have enough budget to do the work.
I certainly hope so.
I hope so
There's
too.
the biggest challenge, if nothing.
I told you, 15 minutes is not enough.
It's never.
Sure.
This problem is...
Sure.
This problem is older than us.
This book, we will read it.
Yeah.
It holds,
and you could download it also in our website. You could download the full report. Thanks for
All right, thank you so much for joining us tonight. That was Executive Director of EDCOM 2, Dr. Carol Mark Yee.
On that note, we have clear run out of time. That is the big story for tonight.
We are One News, all sides, all the time.
Thanks for tuning in. Have a good night.